I got asked a question, and the question was to tell the story of my first time ever training martial arts. And I've talked to many gym owners, and they all say the same thing, which is the hardest thing about growing your business and getting students and getting members is just getting them in the door on day one. Many people want to do this. Many people are intrigued by it. Many people are fans of it. Many people want to get in shape, learn some of these things, confidence, all the things that come with it. But to get them to walk through the door when they know there's killers on the other side, there's hammers, there's these guys that are really good at something, can just be intimidating. It's just hard to get them through the door. Once they come through the door, once they make that first step, man, they're in for life. They love it and they're welcomed and they're learning and they're having fun. But getting them in the door, business standpoint, they said that's our hardest part. It's not just about advertising and getting the word out and getting your location out. It's then getting them to have the courage to make that first step. Okay, so my answer is a little bit complicated, and I will tell you why. My first day of wrestling, I was 9 years old. Never until Dan Severn came along into the UFC did anybody, including myself, consider wrestling a martial art. In fact, I had never even looked up the definition of martial art, but there was no belt system, there was no bowing, there was none of these kind of traditional things. There was no uniform that you had to wear. By example, I mean, yours could be blue and this guy's is green and this guy's black. It wasn't like that, like some of the martial arts gyms. So we just had never thought of it as a martial art. Now, martial art is essentially a form of fighting without weapons, of unarmed combat. So, of course, wrestling would fall into that category, but it wasn't looked at like that. So I still don't look at it like that. And I'm not willing to tell you that my first day of martial arts is when I was 9 years old. I can tell you when I got into the sport of mixed martial arts, I still had never been to what I would consider a martial arts practice. By example, I was training wrestling with Randy Couture and Dan Henderson, and we were all trying to make the Olympic team in 2000 for Greco-Roman wrestling. So it was just the three of us, really small group. We get together every day, we work really hard, and we go home. And one day after the Olympic trials, I just showed up for practice at 3:30. This was absolute habit. Olympic trials were over. We were getting ready for the trial. I just showed up at 3:30. They were in there. They were already in there, and they weren't wearing shoes or socks, and they had MMA gloves on. They had an extra pair, and they threw them to me and said, this is what we're doing today. And Randy was already a UFC champion. I want to say he won his championship in 1997. Dan Henderson was already a champion in that he had done a tournament-style format in, I believe, 1998. Four-man tournament, beat two guys in one night. Boom, won a tournament championship, but he'd already done it as well. Also had gone over to rings, done some great things. These guys had some experience, and I'm new, but that would have been my first day into, I guess, what people are calling martial arts. I never thought of it like that. I always thought this is fight practice. We're in here fighting. We're learning to punch and kick and grind and get the other guy tired and put him in positions and manipulate him and hopefully do more of that than he does to us by the time the bell goes off. That's what it was. I don't know that I ever had my first martial arts practice by what I would consider by definition martial arts, which would come back to more of the traditional belt structured gi, if you will, sensei student, professor student type scenario until 2014. And I had already left the sport. I'd fought for 3 world championships in the UFC and a couple in the WEC and blah, blah, blah. I guess I used that as an opportunity to shine my own wheels, did I? Not really what I meant to do, as much as in retrospect, once I actually got into martial arts under Fabiano Scherner, worked on jiu-jitsu, worked on passing, started to learn positions, started to learn them in the gi, which I felt I had to humble myself to do. When you're fighting for world championships and now you're sharing a mat with teenagers and you're in a gi and you're bowing beforehand, for me, I felt was a way of humbling, but boy, did I ever learn something from it. I would love to go back with the knowledge that I have now into the physical body and the mental anger mindset that I had when I was fighting for some of those championships. But I did feel it was a little bit tough question for me to answer. How long have I been in martial arts? I guess since 2014. How long have I been in cage fighting? 1997 was my first time in the ring. How long have I been in combat? Since I was 9 years old.